Hi, welcome back to another episode of the Community Made podcast. This is a podcast for all women to be able to heal from sexual abuse. We talk about topics from regulating your nervous system to finding closure and so much more and in between. Because as you already know, that healing from sexual abuse can be so complex and it's not black and white. And over the last few weeks, we've been talking about the misconceptions of healing from sexual abuse, and what closure really looks like for sexual abuse survivors. Now, if you missed the episode on misconceptions, I recommend that you go back and check it out. It's a very powerful episode on really dismantling the lies around healing from sexual abuse. Now, one of those misconceptions that was brought up during that episode is so near and dear to my heart that we're going to dive a little bit deeper into it today. So, the misconception, or one of the misconceptions from healing your sexual abuse, is that you can only find closure from your sexual abuse if it did not happen in your childhood or if it wasn't that brutal. Now, this is a huge misconception, and I want to really break this down like a little bit because I think it's important for us to understand how this happens and what's created and why we might buy into this, okay? The thing is that minimizing our own trauma compared to other people's trauma is truly a trauma response. And it kind of allows us to dismiss our behavior or believe that we shouldn't be acting a certain way because someone had it way worse than us. And if someone had it way worse than us, then we shouldn't be having these emotional outbursts. You shouldn't be feeling rage and anger and sadness or feel like you want revenge from this person. So what happens is we're creating this judgment and this shame for our emotional, physical, mental, and spiritual reaction to circumstances that should have never happened in the first place. And these circumstances, regardless of whether or not it happened in your childhood or it was considered brutal. Okay, so I have to be honest, I totally lost my train of thought and I didn't have the transcription up, so I don't even know what I was telling you. And I'm just going to be honest and we're just going to roll with it. So, what I hope I was saying was that just because you believe that somebody had it worse than you doesn't mean that you're not allowed to have this emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual reaction to circumstances that were life altering. Okay. And regardless of whether or not it was considered quote unquote brutal or whether or not it happened in your childhood doesn't mean that you won't have these reactions. Now, here's another thing that we also need to dive into. Trauma is not the event itself. It is the imprint that it actually leaves on your body. So what happens when we have trauma is that we might then have an incomplete stress response or an incomplete emotional cycle. And then what happens is that really stays in our body, and now it's kind of rewiring the way our body is operating. So depending on so many things in your life, including your background, your culture, where you live, what it is that you believe, what you've experienced prior to this point, your ancestral line, your threshold for pain and things like that, all of that plays a part into this. This is why trauma is not black and white. So what I might consider to be traumatic, someone else may not think that that's traumatic. It doesn't mean that it doesn't alter their wiring in their body and their energy and all of those things. We as human beings do not get to decipher what is traumatic for somebody and what's not, right? So just because maybe you had experienced an attack and it was just an attack and you blacked out and you were drunk and you don't really remember it, it doesn't mean that it's not traumatic. And it doesn't mean also that you can't find closure either. So I think that it's very powerful for us to be aware of the beliefs that we're buying into. the and on the flip side of this, okay, on the flip side of this, buying into I can't find closure because it was brutal and it happened to me when I was a child is actually an excuse or a belief that you are holding on to that is keeping you from being able to fully heal, because being fully healed at this point is unfamiliar and feels unsafe, right? It's like, no way, we don't know what that's like. So we kind of give ourselves this excuse or this belief that, oh, well, that person, it didn't happen to them in their childhood, and that's why they were able to find closure, and I can't. So now what it's doing is you are buying into this belief, and then you will continue to have not only experiences that keep you trapped in the cycle of being a victim, but it also really prevents you from being able to move forward with your life just in general. And so you will have these circumstances where you will always hold yourself back. And then your excuse is, oh, well, I had sexual abuse and it was absolutely brutal. And I'm not dismissing your feelings about that. It absolutely was. However, you want to keep in mind that, am I buying into this belief so that I keep myself safe because I don't really know what healing looks like, because that feels very unfamiliar? And if I let go of being the victim and this belief, what can I create with my life? And that is scary as fuck. So I want to really dismantle this belief. And that's why I wanted to really dive into this, because I think that it's heavy on both sides of this, but also it is truly meant to keep us in this area of comfort. And the reality is that if you buy into this belief of it was so brutal or it happened in my childhood and that's why I can't find closure, you let your abuser win. And I don't want that for you at all. Every time you believe that you can't move forward because of the sexual abuse that you experience, you're letting that motherfucker win again. And I don't want that for you. This is why it's so important for you to, yes, find closure, but also find tools and resources that are truly working for you. And speaking of tools and resources that will work for you, I have a 2-hour workshop coming up that is all about dismantling the lies of healing sexual abuse and 3 transformative steps that you can take to find closure as a survivor. It is on Wednesday, September 24th at 10:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. There is a replay. I will leave the link down for you below so that you can check it out. Remember, you can find closure around your sexual abuse no matter what. Just keep in mind that it is a journey, and that is okay, because all healing is truly a journey. All right, this is what I have for you, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.